Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. It is a real honor to join you today, even if it's through this recording. My name is Najeeba Wazefadost, and I speak on behalf of the Asia Pacific Network of Refugees, which is commonly known as APNOR. It is a regional refugee-led organization in Asia region created by and of displaced communities across the region. APNO really exists to help shape a more inclusive and a just protection system by placing the leadership of those with lived experience at its core. But before I speak as a representative of APNOR, I also want to speak briefly as a person. I was forced to flee my home, Afghanistan, as a child. I grew up between places, often invisible in systems that was meant to protect us, but rarely spoke to us. I remember the first time someone asked me not what I needed, but what I knew. That moment changed everything. It reminded me that refugees are not just recipients of decisions, we are makers of solutions. That is what inclusion means to me, not being spoken for, but being listened to and being trusted to lead. That's why the theme of this particular session, regional collaboration for inclusion, matters so deeply for me. No single country, no a single agency or community can do this alone. Inclusion is not a box to tick. It is a shared responsibility. True inclusion requires a shared commitment across sectors and borders to center people with lived experience in the processes that shapes their future. Here in the Pacific, we are already seeing glimpses of what this kind of collaboration can look like. Fiji's growth asylum system, the SOP being signed today between the ministry and UNHCR, and this very dialogue, and this dialogue itself are all promising signals that change is possible when we work together across the region. But governments cannot and should not carry this burden alone. Inclusion requires a whole of society approach. And what do I mean by that? One that draws on the strength of faith communities who welcome displaced with compassion, civil society organizations who provide critical services like education, healthcare and legal aid, and private sector, which offers opportunities for livelihood and innovation. Most importantly, it must recognize the role of refugee-led organization itself. That like those within APNO's network are not, auxiliary actors. They are on the front line of protections. They're providing culturally responsive services. They're fostering trust. They're responding to crisis and helping shaping local solutions that really works. Yet, refugee-led organizations, RLOs, persistently are underfunded. We always hear that from our members. They're undervalued, they're excluded from the formal spaces where decisions are being made about their lives without them. At APNOR, we believe that inclusion is not simply about participation. It is about leadership. How do we move from participation to leadership level? We don't just seek seats at the table. We work to train, to mentor, and to support refugee leaders, refugee communities to build the table themselves. This is what APNOR is about. And how do we do it? Let me give you some examples. For instance, through our Refugee Leadership Alliance, which is probably the only RLO to RLO funding model that exists in the region. Through our pooled funding model, we co-create funding processes that flow directly to RLOs. We've been able to provide over 500,000 Australians so far to refugee-led organizations and refugee-led initiatives across the region to become more sustainable in their work, bypassing the bureaucratic gatekeeping that often leaves communities behind. We also have done it through our meaningful refugee participation trainings, We have developed tools to really help institutions, to help governments, to help donors, to help civil society actors really assess how they can engage and work with refugees and how to move from tokenism to power sharing. And I have to say, it's been quite a rewarding journey. Just in the past few months, we've been able to help the UK government and train the UK government delegate staff on how they can implement meaningful refugee participation at UK level. Similarly, it was quite of an honor to work with New Zealand government and the local agencies, including resettlement agencies, how to do localized approach and how to implement meaningful refugee participation at local level in New Zealand. We have also delivered these trainings, as I said, to governments like UK and New Zealand, where they've been able to put their processes into a practice. So importantly, what I'm trying to say by giving some of the examples of our work is that we are not alone in this work. Across the region, we see inspiring innovations from within the displaced communities. APNOR is not the only RLO that I would give example. In Indonesia, for instance, one of our members, the refugee youth, are building peer education platforms to support their peers. In Papua New Guinea, it's similar, another RLO partnering with the churches and community elders to design trauma-informed programs that respect cultural practices. And again, in New Zealand, we have refugee leaders that are actively shaping the resettlement policy, not just through advocacy, but also through technical support, flexible funding. So APNOR supports these initiatives, not just through advocacy, but also with technical support, flexible funding, growing regional community of practice where refugee-led organizations can learn from one another and grow together. As part of our continued commitment, I am proud to share that the Asia-Pacific Network of Refugees, APNOR, was one of the early co-founders of the Pledge on Meaningful Refugee Participation in the first Global Refugee Forum, GRF, in 2019. We started as a bold collective, commitment that has now grown into a vibrant global movement. Now, this pledge is actually endorsed by over 100 stakeholders, including more than 15 state governments, donors, and civil society actors, working together to ensure that refugee participation is not only protected, but elevated into genuine leadership. Just recently, APNOR was honored to be elected by the fellow signatories, the 100 signatories, to co-lead this global pledge again through the next GRF in 2027. We are quite excited, as we all know, high-level official meeting is also coming in December this year. So in this role, we are trying to work closely with governments, donors, civil society actors, the UN agencies to mainstream meaningful refugee participation as a foundational principle across all levels, global, regional, and local. This includes guiding how policies are shaped, how programs are designed, and how funding can be mobilized and allocated. We see enormous potential here in the Pacific, with its strong tradition of community, dialogue, and resilience in this region, and Fiji in particular is well positioned to model what meaningful refugee participation can look in practice. Today, we warmly invite the government of Fiji to endorse this global pledge and join other pioneering governments in demonstrating leadership at the international stage. Together, we can shape a regional approach rooted in dignity, equity, and shared responsibility, one that can inspire action far beyond our shores. We would be honored to work alongside with you towards this goal and to stand together at the next Global Refugee Forum, showcasing Fiji's commitment as a beacon of inclusive leadership and collaborative protection. To conclude, I ask that we remember one truth. Inclusion is not an optional extra. It is the foundation upon which resilient and effective protection systems are built. And here again in the Pacific, I would say, where relationships and communities values run deep, we have an opportunity to lead, by example, to build a model of collaboration that puts refugees not on the sidelines, but at the center of responses. Once again, thank you very much for having me. And my contact details are with Sarah Mansour from UNHCR. For those of you who are interested to know more about the pledge or to get to know more about the APNOR, please feel free to contact me. Thank you very much.